I'm Nabil Ghouri. I'm the Executive Director of CAMFT. And thank you for coming to our Lunch and Learn. Today it is navigating the COVID-19 crisis as a pre-licensed member. So I want to thank our sponsors, Geico, CPH, and Simple Practice for co-sponsoring this Lunch and Learn series. Thank you very much. Geico, CPH, and Simple Practice, you allow us to provide this for free to members. While this isn't a CE event, I just want to remind folks that you can get CEs online through our online learning library at www.camf.org/self-study. We have a bunch of programs, including law and ethics, if you do need law and ethics hours. We're going to be using the Q&A, so if you have questions, type your questions into the Q&A. Don't do it into the chat. And upvote questions you like, so those will come up and make it easier for me to spot them. I will be using those questions to propose to Robin. But first, I want to introduce Christy Kadarian. Hi, Christy.
Hi, Nabil.
She is the newest CAMFT member. Her title is Educational Outreach Liaison, and she is going to be doing a lot of outreach to pre-licensed members. So we want to introduce Christy to this crowd.
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks so much for joining us here. As my first order of business, I'm going to ask you guys to answer the questions on this poll that we are going to launch right now. And it's just to get a little bit of more information about what topics that you would really benefit from us doing trainings on. So the question is, what professional development topics for pre-licensees would you be most interested in attending a training about? Business 101, so everything you need to know as a pre-licensed therapist around business topics, how to make the most of your traineeship and associate experience, managing finances, and included in that loan repayment and forgiveness, the road to licensure, or all of the above. So if you could take a second and answer that, and then I'll tell you a little bit more.
Yeah, we really do want to get your feedback, so please let us know what's your favorite topic. I have a feeling all of these are popular, to be honest. Yeah. I was suspecting that. I was suspecting that. So
well,
50, yeah.
And that's good news because we have for all attendees, and that includes members.
Can you repost the percentages so we can say it for the okay. So let's go over the numbers. 16% Business 101, 11% How to Make the Most of Your Trip, 4% Managing Finances, road to licensure, but the majority, 53%, everything.
Yeah, great. So we're going to be providing some of this continued education along with this webinar. And so that's really helpful to know. A little bit about my background to give you an introduction. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, as well as I have my doctorate in organizational and educational leadership. And I started my training at USC in 2012, got my Master of Marriage and Family Therapy. And I remember the very first CAMFT meeting I ever went to, which is probably a lot different than maybe if this is your first meeting, as we were on Zoom. But I remember just being so inspired by what I learned at the CAMFT meeting, as well as the many different members and people there that showed me all of the diverse paths that you can take as an MFT and what your career could really look like. And since then, my degree as an MFT and my membership in CAMFT has given me opportunities such as being the director of marketing for a treatment center, even being a professional matchmaker for eHarmony, and so many other amazing opportunities. And part of my role will be helping in developing some curriculum and courses and trainings around some topics that will be really helpful for you, some of what I would have loved to learn after my graduate degree as an MFT, and as well as just helping increase your interest in membership. And I would love to share a few things about what I believe are really helpful as far as being a CAMFT member as a pre-licensed MFT. So we have a job board that has daily postings for employment and internships, continued education, as we've been discussing, our legal team, which gives you exclusive access to speak to CAMFT lawyers. It can answer any legal, ethical, or licensure related questions. Our community, so I would love to invite you to be part of our network. We're the largest network of MFTs worldwide. over 32,000 members, both licensed and pre-licensed, that you can learn from and gain community, and also a lot of support around the road to licensure. So test taking and self-care resources and regular communication that is really essential regarding BBS activities and licensing matters. So all of the attendees of this training, as well as already, if you're a member of CAMFT and you're attending, we're going to be emailing in a few days a free guide that kind of is an overview of some of these topics that you all said you were interested in. And we're also looking forward to continuing to connect. And if you would like to be one of the first people to like our Facebook page, which is CAMFT Pre-Licensee Corner, as well as our Instagram Pre-License CAMFT. We've just launched that. So like those pages, and I can't wait to hear more about what Robin has to share and just continue to be part of this community in this format. So thanks for your time and enjoy.
Thank you, Christy. So she'll be here on deck in case my internet goes out, which has happened in the past. If you saw my session with the attorneys, that did happen. So Robin Anderson, she is currently a member of the CAMFT Board of Directors. She's also in private practice and runs prelicense.com. You still do that, right?
Yes.
And then also works for Track Your Hours. So she has a lot of hats and is, from all the time I've known Robin, she has been very passionate about pre-licensed issues. So it's a thrill to have you here, and thank you for sharing a time out of your busy schedule to meet with CAMFT's pre-licensees. So thank you.
Thank you, Nabil, and I appreciate everyone who's tuning in for this talk and just sending in your questions already. So thank you for that.
So we're going to start with one or two questions that we had prepared before, and then we're going to go to the Q&A. But I see people liking and upvoting stuff. So question number one is, can pre-licensed therapists do telehealth, and what are some considerations they should keep in mind when doing telehealth?
Yes, so absolutely, associates and trainees can do telehealth. And if you aren't familiar with telehealth, I would encourage everyone to start by going to CAMFT's website. You're going to see that link to the COVID-19 resources page, which I believe the staff are frequently checking and updating. So I would say start there, because that's a great place to understand the laws and ethics around telehealth, to see what kinds of HIPAA compliant platforms are out there. There are some great other resources that link to the BBS website that talk about if a client happens to be out of state at this point in time and what you can and can't do in those sorts of situations. So definitely check out that resources page in order to get a start on understanding what you really need to be mindful of as a pre-licensed therapist.
Okay. I'm going to combine a question that we had with the top question right now, which is from Ben Caldwell. So the question we have is, and if you want to hear his presentation, look at our recordings. We have an interview with him from earlier this month. So should pre-license be concerned about employment opportunities disappearing during the COVID-19 crisis? His question is, how has the hiring process been impacted by COVID-19?
So if you had asked me this back in March, I would have told you that as all of this started to unfold with COVID-19, a lot of employers were taking their job listings down. They were scrambling to figure out logistically just how to still provide services to their clients with the therapists that they had on staff at the time. Now that we're in May, I'm seeing we're finding a lot of employers are now adapting. So if you see job listings, they'll even specify oftentimes if the interview will be conducted remotely, if you're going to be seeing clients remotely, if supervision is going to be provided remotely. And unfortunately, because this is a crisis, I imagine we're just going to see more and more demand for mental health services. So, I mean, even into the summer, as more pre-licensed therapists are graduating, getting their registration numbers, I believe we're going to just see even more employers posting job listings. So it's looking really good right now.
Okay, great. So the next question I want to ask is, it's a question I've been hearing a lot from pre-licensees, from Nathan Oren. When do we use telehealth on the BBS experience verification form? Child sessions, family sessions, or only individual? My understanding is this is option, which option is this? Option 2?
So it looks like they're referring to option 2. And
Yeah.
I don't know how many of the viewers today tuned in for Kim Madsen's talk with Nabil 2 weeks ago, but she made it very clear that if you, Kim Madsen's from the BBS, by the way, for those of you who aren't familiar, but if you're using option 2, one of the sections is for telehealth counseling. And the BBS has made it very clear, or at least Kim Madsen from the BBS has made it clear, that if you're offering telehealth counseling under option 2, you have to put those hours under telehealth counseling. So you can't put them under individual psychotherapy, diagnosis and treatment of couples, families, children. And I realize that's putting a lot of people in a bind because it's possible to max out on those telehealth counseling hours. So what she was recommending is that if you're in that position right now where you've maxed out or you're at risk of maxing out, start looking at option 1 and do that calculation between your hours. See if it would actually make sense to consider switching over to option 1.
Right. And reminder, option 2, you must submit your application by the end of this year. So it must be mailed by December 31st, 2020 for it to be considered under option 2. If you mail it January 2, it's not going to make it. They will not consider it. But if they process it and you're in the process, you can get it to, you can make it occur. There's a lot of questions about that, so I think we've answered those. I'm going to refer you again to Kim Madsen's BBS presentation. We do talk about it a little bit more, I think, than just this brief interlude. So, so I'm going to skip the other questions that are nuanced versions of that. So let's see. Carly Mervis asks, are the ethics test requirements of a year being extended beyond due to COVID-19? So I'm assuming this is the L&E for licensure?
Mm-hmm. And I know for a while the testing centers were closed. I believe they've opened up again. I'm actually not fully up to date on everything, but I know the BBS has been putting out updates as the situation starts to unfold. And Nabil, maybe you're aware, I think they were considering some waivers, but I wasn't clear which ones they're looking at right now. So any information on your end?
So this is about the exams. Okay, so the exams, this is related to the testing center question as well, okay? So obviously they're gonna have to make some accommodations for if you can't take the test. So, so that will be considered. I would still look and see if testing centers are open. I would check pretty regularly because some are reopening under physical distancing guidelines. And so, and they're also looking at third-party sites as well, which are often with universities. So there are more potential places to take the test. Keep in mind, you're competing with every other profession, including medicine, nursing, lawyers, all kinds of stuff. So just be aware of that. There are some possibilities there, but they are, so I think they will be accommodating of if you can't make the exam in the time frame. They can't do anything about it. So now they can't have that, they don't have that in writing yet, but my guess is they're going to be accommodating on it. Let's see. Let's talk about what is the update for testing centers, because that's coming up and it's related to this. So do you want to answer that or you want me to answer?
If you wouldn't mind going ahead and taking a shot at that one. I know you just spoke with Kim 2 weeks ago, so maybe you have a little more information.
So testing centers were closed obviously in March and April, but some are starting to open up. They've opened up the third parties. So those are often universities, so you can look for those places. I would see what you have available and see if you could sign up for one and start preparing for it. But, you know, you also have to do this, you know, in a balance with your safety and your comfort zone. One of the best things we know about test taking is manage your anxiety. And so if you are anxious about COVID, walking into a testing site, that is not going to bode well for your test. So be sure that you have that anxiety in a good place, your anxiety management in a good place.
Mhm.
Okay, let's see. So how do I take the law and ethics exam? Look for testing centers that are open, or wait until you're comfortable at this point. Recommendations for places to look for jobs as an associate.
Mhm. So I can answer that one, and
Yeah.
it's going to be a plug. I apologize, but if you go to prelicensed.com/jobs, you're going to find all kinds of paid positions. I think we have 50 at the moment, but over the years we've posted over 4,000 positions, and they're all paid. They all offer clinical supervision. So I would say go ahead and start there. Of course, you can go to other websites. I've seen Indeed, Craigslist, individual companies' websites. You know, you can find their careers pages and get that information.
And CAMFT.
Yeah, yeah, that
And
too. You
CAMFT,
can
we
go on
do
to
have
CAMFT.org. Yeah. But the job listings
CAMFT.org.
are definitely out
We'll
there.
put that link in the chat.
Mhm.
The link in the chat is already there, so you can copy and paste it, and we'll put it in any materials if we can get that back out.
Mhm.
Let's see, what else do we have? Although therapists are essential workers, we are in a unique position in which we can work from home and do telehealth. Can supervisors force pre-licensed therapists to return to the office?
So
Ooh,
you're
talk about
like,
a controversial question. Thank you, Teresa, for that
mhm.
question.
And I know you were sharing a story with me that you had heard about a trainee. If you feel comfortable sharing that one, because it just
I
broke my
will.
heart.
I'm going to keep everything anonymous, but a student, so this is a trainee, um, at the beginning, and this is obviously 2 months ago at this point, at the beginning of the stay-at-home order, the shelter-in-place, was uncomfortable with going going out and doing therapy. The person asked to do telehealth, the person said no, the supervisor said no, and in the process of all this ended up firing the practicum student and the other practicum students who didn't want to come into the office either. So, and when you're in practicum, when you are in school, you do have that support of your university. So talk to your program and find out how they could help you. Also, I don't really know if that's a good practicum site, if they are not even engaging in a conversation about telehealth. So that is always a concern. But share your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I would say, definitely if you're a trainee, talk to your program manager or director, administrator, whoever can help as far as coordinating that and seeing if you can get a little bit of a grace period too, if you haven't earned enough hours in order to graduate yet. If you're an associate, then I'm not an attorney, so I can't speak to this from a legal perspective, but there are definitely employers who are, taking the necessary safety precautions. And again, they'll usually be pretty upfront about whether they're able to transfer over to telehealth. And unfortunately, some employers, because of the nature of their work, where you're still needing to do in-home visits and maybe the clients don't have access to an internet connection, they might insist that some of their therapists still meet with clients face-to-face. So if you're in that situation, then I would say do your best to practice social distancing, any other safety precautions you can incorporate into your practice. I would say look into that. Even ask your employer if they might be able to provide some additional support there. But ultimately, I think it's going to come down to everyone's comfort level as far as what they are and aren't willing to do when it comes to their own personal safety.
Okay, we're getting this question. What is the best video service to use for telehealth that is secure? I don't know if you feel comfortable, if you feel like
Sure. Yeah.
Good. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
so I'm not going to promote one over the other, but there are a number of HIPAA compliant telehealth platforms. Some of them I believe are free or very low cost. Others are incorporated into other services. So I know in my workplace we use BC, but I know therapists who have used Doxy. Let's see, some of the others, I think there are different EHR platforms that
Simple
have
Practice.
incorporated. Yeah, yeah.
Simple Practice, which is a CAMFT affinity partner.
Mhm.
And so if you sign in through, if you start through CAMFT's link, you get an extra month free at the beginning. So you get 2 free months instead of 1 free month.
Yeah.
So there's an advantage going through CAMFT for
Mhm.
that. And we'll put that in the links. Okay. Janice asks, what is the best way to find a private LMFT supervisor in order to begin telehealth in a private setting?
Ooh, okay. So for this one, I realized that a lot of camp chapters aren't having in-person meetings right now, but I've heard many success stories of associates going to local camp chapter meetings and connecting with the licensed therapist there and being able to find a supervisor through that channel. You know, it's something where a lot of private practice supervisors aren't looking to necessarily utilize job listing websites. So they don't want to get a flood of applicants. They really want to meet someone face to face and get an understanding for how good of a fit they would be for their practice. So it's a little more effort if you're trying to get into private practice, but I would say start with those face-to-face opportunities to network.
Or face-to-face in virtual world.
Yeah. And a lot of camp chapters are starting to adapt and they're offering their meetings virtually. So if there's an opportunity to connect with one of those chapters and go to their virtual meetings and put your name out there, I'd say definitely give that a shot.
Okay, so let me go back up to Ashley asks a question. I'm a student not starting my practicum until July. Because I have all this extra time on my hands, I'm attending online workshops that offer CEUs. Can I count these yet, or do I have to be in practicum for them to count?
So in between, I believe either, if I recall correctly, so you wouldn't necessarily be getting CEUs. You don't need CEUs until you're licensed, but there is the workshop, seminars, training, or conferences category for option 2. And if it's option 1, it's under the non-clinical experience category.
Okay.
So the question is going to be if there's a supervisor who's able to sign off on those hours.
So if you need to have someone that you can document with, I've sat in on these workshops.
Mm-hmm.
So that's your biggest catch. And it's hard if you're not in practicum yet because you don't really have someone supervising you yet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm seeing a lot of questions about the BBS option 2 and the deadline. So I just want to repeat from our conversation from my conversation with BBS that was videotaped, and you can see that deadline is not going to change. It's still December 31st. And there's going to be no extension, and they're not changing the telehealth definition yet. So, or they're not changing that. So if you think you're not going to get those hours or your buckets are full, look at option 1.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to remind people, I'm seeing a number of questions on that.
And I'm going to put in another quick plug because Track Your Hours is also an affinity partner of CAMFT. So the link should be posted in the chat in a moment, but you can, as a CAMFT member, get an extended free trial. So you can check it out, you can start putting in your hours, and then actually tab back and forth between option 1 and option 2 within Track Your Hours. So you don't have to pull up the BBS forms and manually write in your hours and look between the two. Track Your Hours can just calculate that for you. So definitely give that a look, again, if you're in that position where you're really worried about meeting that December 31st cutoff, or you're maxing out on those telehealth hours with option 2.
And as a reminder, if you have nuanced versions of this question, call CAMFT and speak to one of our attorneys. For members, they can talk to an attorney. If you're not a member, you can join when you call or join online and then call in. So Archana Chatkara, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, is the 6-year time frame going to be extended for those who are collecting hours for licensure during this time, but have had fewer face-to-face hours?
And I believe this was also covered in your interview with Madsen. And again, I don't know which waivers they're currently considering, but from what I recall, I don't think they were looking into that. That could potentially change, but I don't think that's on the table right now from what I
think they're saying get your second registration. which in that case means you can't do private practice anymore. The second registration, when you start the second registration number, you could only go through agencies and not an individual private practice. So, okay. So let's see. It is 12:26. I want to give people a reminder. We're going to, Robin, you're able to go past 12:30. Is that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
here for as long as
So
you need.
we're going to go a few more, we're going to go about 15 more minutes longer. So I want to try to get as many questions possible answered. Wow, we're at 390 video, which means we're probably 400 including the phone. Can you give an update on where BBS is with reviewing applications? Do you know that answer?
Yeah, so if you go on Facebook, the BBS has a page on there, and every week they're updating the application times, the processing times. So I believe for a while when they were getting used to working from home, things slowed down. Last I heard, they were starting to pick up speed again. It's going to depend on what kind of paperwork you're submitting, what exactly they're reviewing and processing. But every week they're posting an update on their Facebook page.
The slowest, my recollection, is LMFT license applications and LCSW license applications, if I recall correctly. Okay. Oh, let's see. Christina asks, I need 300 more child and family hours to reach 3,000. Due to COVID-19, is BBS looking to amend the telehealth hours option? Yeah, this is a complicated answer. From what we've heard, they're not going to change it. And so I would look for option 1 and see, because those buckets don't matter in option 1, right?
Yeah, it all falls under Section A. So, any kind of therapy that you provide, whether it's in person or telehealth, all goes under the same category. So you don't have that fear of maxing out with telehealth hours.
If you still need child hours,
yeah,
and family hours, but you don't necessarily have the buckets.
correct.
So, Christina, you may want to look at option 1. And for more details, call CAMFT. If you're a member, call CAMFT and talk it over with someone who can answer it in more than 30 seconds. Because we're trying to get through as many questions as possible. Okay. Jacqueline Coe says, I'm a dual license, almost associate. Is there a difference in who can sign off on my hours? Can my individual supervisor sign off on LPCC hours once my degree is posted?
I would have to double check on that. I know the BBS talks about the differences between the licensure paths, but Nabil, anything kind of on your end that you can say to that?
That's a tough one. I have to be honest. I don't know. I haven't paid a lot of attention to the counseling rules. I know the CAMFT attorneys do, so I would say call them. Could email also BBS. They are emailing, and they have different mailboxes for each type of question. So you could email this to the APCC mailbox and ask them that specific question about the counseling hours. Okay. How will BBS be navigating the 90-day rule and needing a live scan due to COVID?
Yeah, because that was another thing where the live scan centers closed down for a while. And I'm not familiar where they are with that right now. Did Kim say anything about that?
I'm pretty sure most of these, I mean, they have to do this for police and stuff. And so they have social distance. I mean, I would check a lot of these live scan locations are now back in operation with some modifications. So I would contact, I would research live scan locations in your area and see if you could, what you could find. So I want to note it's 12:30. So if you only had half an hour, feel free to log off. Take a reminder, look at the Q&A and upvote questions you would like to see answered. But we're going to keep going and we're going to keep answering as many questions as we can. So, okay. So let me look at this. I got email updates now. Why are emails coming right now? Can AMFTs start their own telehealth private practice and contract their own supervisor?
So you still have to follow the rules around, and I realize it's a bit tricky because technically with private practice settings, if you're already in a private practice setting and you're an associate, then technically you're not physically in the private practice office, you're in your home or where, in a remote location offering these services. If you're looking to get into private practice and contract with a supervisor, I would say make sure that you're going onto the BBS's websites, you're reading up on the rules specific to private practice settings. And there, I believe they have like a frequently asked questions document as far as supervision goes. A CAMFT attorney would probably also be a great contact for you just to answer those questions, understand what are the rules, regulations around, starting up a practice. Obviously you do need a supervisor, but I would definitely follow up and get some more clarification from a legal and ethical perspective with that.
Okay. Leslie asks, subsequent intern status or associate status. How do we find work during this difficult time as subsequent interns when there is so much private practice work? Will BBS be changing their requirements? I don't think BBS is going to be changing it, but there's a lot, as Robin, you were saying, there's a lot of agency work right now.
Absolutely, yes. And I would say definitely go again onto prelicense.com/jobs. You'll see that there are some private practice positions on there, but I would say the vast majority are agency settings. Now, it might depend on where exactly you live, but that's why I say, look at the different avenues that you have for finding about these different job leads. When it comes to agencies, they're more likely to post their positions online. When it comes to private practice, you're more likely to hear about it through word of mouth or networking meetings. So definitely explore all your options depending on what you're looking for as an associate or a trainee.
Okay, so a question I think you can answer given your relationship with Track Your Hours. Will my supervisor be able to sign my hours online, and can I submit my hours online? I love Koreshi asks that question.
Yeah, so I know the BBS has talked about how they're working on making some adaptations. As of right now, they're accepting transcripts from universities online. So I think they're definitely trying to adapt to all of these COVID-19 changes. They have talked about how they're allowing certain, like it's called like a wet signature. They're starting to look at ways where you don't have to have like a wet signature, but I don't believe they have a system in place as of right now to accept all of that paperwork electronically. But definitely keep an eye on the BBS's website. And they also do have on their Facebook page, they do live videos every Friday. I think it starts at 2 in the afternoon Pacific time. So go ahead and check out those live videos every Friday. You can answer your questions just like you've been doing that here, and they'll be able to give you updates on a weekly basis about where they are with that process.
Okay, Nathan asks, how do I take the LNE exam? I have my associate number, but feel lost on this next step towards the license.
Yeah, so I would say go on the BBS website. They have an exams link, and they should have more information there about Pearson VUE. They have like a COVID-19 notice, and I believe they keep that up to date as well, just as far as what's going on with the testing centers, which ones are open. But the expectation is that they're not going to waive the law and ethics requirement, because that would be, not part of their stance on consumer protection. So definitely don't assume that because of COVID-19, you just get a pass on the law and ethics exam. Go to the BBS website and see the latest on that.
And then you may need to go to the Pearson website and see what sites are open. There may be sites open not in your county, particularly if you're or in the Bay Area. Those sites may not be open, but some in outlying areas may be open. So there may be some options, or you can wait until the sites are in your area are open. We got a question: where can we find archives of the previous videos on the CAMFT website if we didn't sign up for it? So I think we have already posted that in the chat. If not, we will post it in the chat. We are posting all these videos in our online learning library, I believe. Let's see. There's a lot of links in the chat, and so we will make sure, we will send an email to folks and make sure that you get that link to the BBS as well as to some of our other videos as well. Okay. Let's see. If your testing center canceled your test date, will they reach out, or is it on us to reschedule? I think it's. I think you have to reschedule. They're not going to pick a date for you, right? I think you need to reschedule, right?
Right, and I don't know if they're. I would assume they're emailing at the moment, but I'm not clear on what exactly they're doing at this point. But yeah, if your test has been, if the date's already passed, I would say be proactive, reach out to Pearson VUE yourself and see, you know, how soon you can reschedule that exam.
Okay. Joy asks, I've heard the process to obtain an associate number takes up to.
It looks like Nabil froze, so I am going to pick that up. And it was Joy's question, the process to obtaining an associate number has been taking 3 to 6 months as I move out of my practicum internship and graduate. Can I still work or apply for work under supervision while waiting to receive my number?
So my understanding is that as long as it's still within that 90-day window and you're meeting the other requirements, once it goes past the 90 days, that's going to get a little tricky. So I would say reach out to the BBS if you believe you're going to be at risk of going past that point.
Got it. Yeah. Okay, great. And this is a question from Regina, and she asks, with COVID being so life-changing, what are some issues that are coming up with clients because of it, and how are some therapists helping their clients? So Robin, do you have any insight on that as a clinician? And
yeah, and of course I'm going to respect my clients' confidentiality, but some general themes I see coming up is, you know, of course, clients are losing their jobs. There's a lot of uncertainty about the future. For others, it's the social isolation that's really starting to take a toll. And in fact, with a lot of my clients now, they're actually very concerned about kind of being forced to return to work, forced to return to quote unquote normal life when they still have some health concerns, or maybe they live with someone who's immunocompromised. So, you know, for me, I find that a lot of focus around DBT skills, you know, radical acceptance, being able to, you know, adapt to this current climate that we're facing has been really helpful for a lot of my clients. But yes, I would anticipate we're just going to see more and more people who are really reaching their breaking point as far as their stress goes.
Yeah, and I was talking to some CAMFT colleagues very similarly about that. When the crisis began, it seemed like everyone was in more of a crisis mode, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs kind of on this level. And now I'm seeing a lot of my clients kind of shift into more existential crisis. And now the transition of what does that look like? You know, the laws might be changing, but personal choices now kind of come into play. So those are some good clinical topics that we have been working with around our clients. And I think Nabil's back. So
I am, but Christy, you take over the Q&A, because when I logged off or got
you
muted,
lost it. Yeah.
I lost the Q&A. So it's a new count for me. So
yeah. Yeah, sure. And another question that I think is a good one is, how do you feel about COVID-19 consent forms being used with potential clients? So I think that just in general around consent forms and changing, I know there's been some discussion on, you know, do we need the actual consent? And obviously it depends on your individual supervisors and sites, but do you have any insight on that, Robin, or what you're doing?
Yeah, for me, we do have a separate informed consent for telehealth. I think it's just generally a good idea to let people know that, you know, as great as telehealth is, one of the downsides is sometimes technology can fail. So I have made a point with my clients to, after reviewing where they're physically located, that they are in fact in California. I always let them know that if we do get disconnected, I'm going to reach out to them. at the phone number that they have on record. So I always check in just to make sure at the beginning of every session that I have the most up-to-date information, so that that's one less thing they have to worry about in the event of some internet connection issues.
Which happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which happened, and we had a plan. Christy stepped in. So
yeah, having a plan I think is key, and like you said, Robin, like doing what you can to control that, like getting the information that you can, as we've seen as a theme from a lot of speakers, has been helpful. And another question by Yolanda, maybe more clarification, could you explain the 90-day window? So maybe some people aren't familiar with what that term is, but can you explain that?
Yeah, so this refers to the period after you graduate from your master's program and when you're waiting to get your associate registration number. So for that 90-day period, it could be up to 90 days in that time period. Assuming again you have a supervisor, you can still earn hours toward your 3,000 hours. Now, once you pass the 90-day window, that's where some people are concerned about the BBS's processing times. So again, I would say go on to the BBS's Facebook page. As of right now, I'm looking, and it looks like the application timeframe for Associate Marriage and Family Therapists, they're currently processing applications received between April 30th and May 4th. So actually, they're not too far behind at this point, but I would say as soon as you have all the paperwork you need from your master's program, make sure that's getting submitted to the BBS so they can start processing that right away and get you your associate registration number.
And my understanding is, just to add, you have to get live scanned, right? So that you have to be at an agency that requires live scan. Private practice hours don't count ever, and they didn't add count before. And then if you apply within the 90 days, all the hours until you get the associate, even longer than 90 days, can count. But you have to apply within 90 days of the graduation. Right, Robin?
And
I want to ask the last question, so keep going, and then I will ask the very last question.
Okay, yeah, and just one that kind of summarizes, I see like a few from Lexi, Kathleen, around the job question that we addressed originally about trainee jobs, and how some people, there's more of like, layman counseling or helping. How can we push towards job opportunities for trainees and pre-licensed people? And I saw a question about posting or sending information on employers that signed up to attend the 2020 Associate Career Fair at the annual conference in May. So thanks for that, Kathleen. I think that we're all kind of hearing that that's like a need for knowing about practicum sites. And with CAMFT, I think we can definitely work on posting that through our job board as a CAMFT member. So would love for you to join if you're not a member as a pre-license. That's a reduced fee is $95. And Robin, do you think that there are some practicum sites that you could post on pre-licensed as well?
Yeah, so because pre-license is very niche, it focuses on paid positions. It's rare that I post positions for trainees, but I will say sometimes it is possible to have a practicum site and get paid. So you can definitely keep an eye out for that. But again, I would say because practicum sites can open and close programs, and there can be a lot of changes that happen. A lot of times universities are going to have the most up-to-date information about practicum sites. If you find that perhaps the staff aren't the most helpful, see if you can connect with alumni from the previous year or two and see where they did their work, and if they can even connect you with someone at their former practicum site, so that you can again have that more personal connection and really get the ball rolling as far as finding a practicum site.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to ask one last question, and then while we're doing that, we'll push a poll, and our second poll, and then Christy, you can wrap up. So the last question, and Robin, I want to go a little bit out of the details and go back a little sky high.
Yeah.
How can pre-licensed therapists, supervisors, employers, and other professionals who support pre-licensed therapists advocate for meaningful change?
Mhm. So there are a number of organizations that are definitely focused on issues pertaining to pre-licensed therapists. CAMFT is one of them. It's the reason why I joined as a CAMFT member. The benefits are great, but for me, it was really the advocacy that they're doing on the state and national level that sold me. So I would say, you know, anything you can do relating to CAMFT, anything that you can do as far as reaching out to the BBS. So in the past, I would go to board meetings, I would speak directly to the board members of the BBS and share my concerns. But now, of course, with COVID-19, connect with them on their Friday live Facebook chats. It's one of the staff members, I believe, who hosts those videos, but they can still pass the word on to board members. So keep expressing your concerns. If a waiver hasn't come out yet, I understand there's a lot of anxiety around what may and may not change in the months to come. So keep telling the BBS about those concerns. And then there are individuals and other organizations that just put out really great content and keep, you know, reaching out to employers, try to explain to employers the importance of following best practices of supervision, which CAMFT has put out a statement about that as well. So it's hard when you're an individual, but if a bunch of individuals can come together and support an organization or join an organization, then those voices are amplified. So definitely take a look around and see what your options are as far as continuing to advocate for pre-licensed therapists.
Certainly call CAMFT about your questions, because while we can't advocate for you specifically, we do hear the pulse of what's going on. And so if we see, you know, hundreds of people asking for something, that may get us to act on something. We see patterns. The other thing is always a reminder, why don't you tell the members about the board statement on pre-licensee pay?
Yeah, so that one, I believe if you go to the CAMFT website, it's under the members tab in the association documents. So one of the things that CAMFT's, a number of board members did was they looked at the research about, you know, when you're not paying or underpaying associates and what that can do, not just in the immediate, you know, creating more burnout, but what it can also do in the long run is actually make it more difficult for associates to find paid positions once they've accepted something that's unpaid or underpaid. So that's a really great statement to take a look at. If you're a pre-licensed therapist, definitely share that with your licensed colleagues. If you're an employer, I realize there can be a lot of reasons why it can be difficult to obtain funding and provide those paid positions, but you know, it helps all of us as a profession when we're paying associates, and it also helps with client outcomes too. So I think that's something we all need to be striving for as a profession, to make paid positions the norm in our industry.
Okay, Marlene, or no, Christine, do you want to close it out?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much, Robin. That was such amazing information. And thank you to all the attendees for joining us for this webinar. We also have another webinar on May 22nd at 12 p.m. with Barbara Griswold, billing for telehealth in the age of COVID-19. So we have a few next week as well. So make sure that you sign up for those. And I'm sorry we weren't able to get to everyone's question, but we'll do our best to get these questions answered offline. If you need any immediate questions, you can obviously call CAMFT and talk with a member of our legal team, or visit our website. And when this webinar concludes, make sure that you fill out, we have a little 2-question survey that you can open in a new browser and fill out for an opportunity to win a free CE webinar in our on-demand library, which is $40. And make sure that if you haven't yet checked out our membership page for pre-licensed, as well as Facebook and Instagram, we'd love to connect with you there and continue to share these resources and have you as a member. So thanks for attending, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, and join us on another webinar.
Yeah, take care, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Stay safe, stay healthy.